This little thing is easily the most important piece of equipment in any photographer's kit, and probably the most underrated as well. You can spend thousands on a shiny new camera and lenses and have nothing to show for it if you don't have a reliable memory card to store your photos. Now, the truth is that no storage device is perfect, and sometimes it takes a tiny little mistake, a wrong click, a rushed format, or an unexpected glitch within your camera itself to lose everything that's stored on them. That's why it's so important to know, first of all, how to choose the right SD card, and then secondly, how to recover your hard-earned photos if an emergency does happen. Recovering corrupted memory cards isn't just a cool tech skill to have. For photographers, it might be the difference between saving or losing a once-in-a-lifetime series of photos. Now, my name is Will Barron and I'm an amateur photographer from the UK, and I've burnt through dozens and dozens of SD cards at this point. And today I'm going to show you how to choose the right SD card, how to protect your images, and for when things go wrong, how to use my trusted recovery software to bring your files back. Okay, so imagine spending thousands on a camera body and lenses only to trust all of this pressure that you've got to take these great photos to a fragile piece of plastic the same size as your thumb. That's the irony that most photographers live with. The SD card is often overlooked and it becomes a single point of failure throughout the entirety of the camera imaging system. Because when it fails, everything else fails as well. Your camera, your skills, your vision, the time and energy that you're putting into the shoot itself, all of that becomes instantly useless and obviously very frustrating, right? Most photographers assume that SD cards are just cheap accessories that we've got to have, and so they don't put that much effort into selecting them. But the reality is, if you choose the wrong SD card at the first step of all this process, you are more likely to suffer from the consequences of failures further down the line. Now, failure doesn't always mean visible cracks or damage on the physical SD card itself. It could mean silent corruption, files that appear transferred but don't actually transfer onto your computer, or sudden error messages, which I've had recently with my Sony cameras when trying to copy footage. It can happen on location, in the middle of a shoot, or after you think everything is all backed up and all safe and secure. When you're heading home, happy with the images that you created, disaster can strike there as well. That is why professionals insist that SD cards aren't just an accessory, but they're the backbone of your photography workflow. Treating your SD cards casually is like building a house on a pile of sand, knowing that at any moment it could all fall apart. And that leads us to the real heart of the matter here. What exactly is going on inside these SD cards? I just threw it across the room. Let me go and get it. What exactly is going on inside these SD cards, and why are some of them more reliable than others? Now, when you press the shutter on your camera, the data that you've captured, that image, doesn't magically get stored inside your device. The photo gets pushed onto your SD card where it gets stored. Now, to understand why SD cards fail, it helps to know some of the crazy stuff that's happening inside of them that, well, us photographers never really appreciate. So, an SD card is built with what's called NAND flash memory. We don't need to go too far into the science here, but NAND memory is a type of storage that doesn't need constant power to keep your files safe. So unlike your computer's RAM memory, which forgets all the information that's stored on it once you cut the power to your computer, NAND memory stores this information using tiny electrical charges that are held within the chip itself. So again, we won't go too far into the science, but you can think of each cell within your NAND memory as being a little bucket or a little container that either traps a charge or holds no charge. Depending on whether there's a charge trapped or not, this cell is then allocated a number of 1 or 0. So we've got billions of these 1s and 0s that get read by whatever device you've inserted your SD card into, and those tiny bits of information make up our photos or videos or whatever's stored on our SD cards. Okay, so how do these NAND cells keep hold of this information even when they've been removed from the camera or from the computer and they're just being held in your hand? Well, the NAND cells within your SD card push electrons into a floating gate layer inside the cell, which is then surrounded by 2 isolation layers. This vault of electrons in the floating gate allocates that cell a 1 if the floating gate is full, or if it's empty, it's allocated a 0, thus allowing the information that makes up your photos and videos to be stored on the card, whether there's power going to it or not. Then when the data is ready to be wiped, a current is placed in a different part of that NAND cell and the electrons tunnel from the floating gate, where they've been stored, back to where they were originally. Because the electrons are insulated within either the floating gate or the channel layer by additional isolation layers, they remain there even when you take your SD card out of your camera, so your pictures are safe even when the SD card isn't receiving any power. And it's pretty cool, right? All of this stuff is happening at this crazy microscopic level, billions of times every time you take your camera out to shoot a photo. It's truly, truly a marvel of technology, and well, nobody gives the SD cards the love that they deserve. Now, of course, no technology is flawless. NAND cells have a limited number of read and erase cycles, and with heavy use, these cells wear out, much like a car tire when it's been driven for too many miles. And leaving a SD card in direct sunlight or near a strong magnetic field can also slowly corrupt the delicate charges stored within the different NAND layers that were just covered. This is why corrupt SD cards are somewhat of a common occurrence for photographers who are taking lots of photos. Just one of these NAND cells having a few electrons, and this is how crazy it is, right? Just one of these NAND cells having a few of these tiny, tiny, tiny electrons in the wrong place or the wrong time, they mess up the ones and zeros that have been allocated from the camera to the SD card, and when you try and read it in a device, it becomes unreadable. It is corrupt. And every SD card, no matter how advanced, carries this vulnerability. That's why treating them carefully is important, because it gives the NAND cells a longer life so they can reliably hold on to the most important files that you create. So we now understand how data is stored within an SD card. The next question naturally then becomes, how do we make sure that the card that we're using is as fast and as reliable as what it possibly can be? Okay, so if you've ever looked at an SD card, you've probably noticed all the tiny, seemingly random numbers and letters scattered across the label. There's C10, U3, V30, and even sometimes Roman numerals like I or II. And these aren't just marketing tricks. Well, they might be marketing tricks, we'll come into that in a second, but they also allegedly define how fast data can be written onto a card. Now, the problem when people buy SD cards typically is they buy an SD card based on the capacity of that card alone. So 8GB, 16GB, 64GB card, that's what they're focused on. And then they end up confused when the video that they're recording freezes and crashes, or the burst of photos lasts for 3 photos rather than the 300 that it should be lasting. So let's look at some of these numbers so we can understand what memory cards we should be looking at to get high performance from them. And the first thing to understand is the speed class. This is the basic rating marked as a number inside the letter C. So for example, C10 means the card is guaranteed at least a 10 megabytes per second writing speed. Then we've got UHS, which is ultra high speed class marked with a U. So U1 promises at least 10 megabytes per second, whereas U3 raises that to 30 megabytes per second. Then finally, we have the video speed class. This is the most recent iteration of these classifications. The video speed class is marked as V30, V60, or V90, and this tells you the minimum speed designed specifically for video recording. So this is crucial if you're capturing 4K content or even higher bitrate content than that, or higher resolution content than that. And here's where all of this gets a little bit tricky, because advertised numbers often show maximum speeds in a burst, in a second, in a split moment, rather than sustained speeds, which I think is a complete and utter con on the part of the manufacturers of these memory cards. I mean, what would be the point of buying a Ferrari if you can only drive it fast for 3 seconds before having to drive it at 5 miles an hour for the rest of your journey? That's essentially what these memory card manufacturers are trying to do to us. So you have to use these certifications and these numbers and these marketing numbers with a little grain of salt when you are comparing one memory card to another. Now, for this video, I've done some testing myself with my Sony a7R IV cameras, and the fastest cards in the cameras were the Sony SFG TUF V90 cards. They had an in-camera write speed of around 172 megabytes a second. The next fastest card was the very common SanDisk Extreme Pro cards, and I've got a bunch of these I've collected over the years. These came in at 164 megabytes a second. Next was the Pro Grade V90 cards that came in at 160 megabytes a second, which is pretty similar to both of the others. Now, by far the worst 2 cards that I tested were both labeled as V90 cards, and they were the Lexa Professional and the Delkin Devices cards that both came in at around 87 megabytes a second. And the Delkin card broke. It just stopped recording anything to it. I don't know what went wrong. I was only putting it in and out of the camera and doing these tests. They just stopped working after about 20-30 minutes of playing around with it. And well, this isn't very good because both these cards only wrote at about half the speed of the Sony TUF cards, even though technically they've got the same specifications written on them. This is not good for the consumer. Obviously, the average person who doesn't have a YouTube channel isn't going to go buy 5 or 6 different brands of memory cards to do all this testing. And so I blame both the memory card manufacturers for just bullshitting the numbers, but also the body that I guess creates these specifications as well. Now, obviously, choosing the right card goes beyond just speed. And I mean, for me personally, as a landscape photographer, I don't really care about the speed of card. Because at the most, I'm taking 3 photos back to back, which will be a bracketed shot. Then we're trying to capture different exposures kind of instantaneously, one after the other. I'm not doing wildlife photography where I might be taking a burst of 50 photos, or a sports photographer taking a burst of 100 photos. That's not really in my workflow. But something I do care about is SD card reliability. Now, when it comes to memory cards, reliability is often more valuable than speed or size for a large majority of photographers. And an unreliable card for me personally could mean a 3 a.m. start, a hike up a big bloody mountain for a sunrise shoot, getting what I think are epic shots, and then it being a complete waste of time by the time I get home and pull the SD card into the computer. Now, one of the most simple and most ignored rules when buying SD cards when you want them to be reliable is to buy them from trusted brands and also authorized sellers. There are so many cheap knockoff SD cards out there. It's insane. They look identical to the real thing, but inside they are built, the components are either just built with lower quality parts, but may have some of the same specifications, or they might be a completely different card, just branded like the one that you were trying to buy in the first instance. Basically, if a deal for memory cards looks too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. These are the cards that are most likely to fail unexpectedly and to leave you scrambling to try and resolve the issue. Additionally, you've got used or refurbished cards, and I feel like these are another little bit of a trap here. If you buy used, you never really know how many cycles the card has been through, and every write or delete shortens its lifespan, as we talked about with the NAND memory earlier on in the video. It might work for a short while, it might work for years, it might be perfect, but during an important shoot, if it collapses, you're going to have wished that you hadn't been such a tight ass and you just bought a new memory card to go with the thousands of dollars of camera gear that you'd also bought alongside with it. Capacity also matters, and people have different kind of viewpoints on this, but it's tempting to buy one massive card and then trust it for everything. You get all your shooting from an entire weekend or a week away on one single card. But in my opinion, that creates a bit of a single point of failure. I mean, imagine putting all your savings into your wallet and then you misplace the wallet. When that card breaks, everything's going to disappear in an instant, or you lose that card, or something happens to it. I like to split my shoots across multiple smaller cards, which means that one failure doesn't wipe out an entire project. Obviously, the rebuttal to this is if you've got multiple cards, you've got multiple more failure points. But I would rather come home with 3 out of 4 cards intact rather than that one main card just being wrecked for whatever reason, or you lose it, or it gets corrupted, or whatever happens to it. Now, with all that said, even with the best cards and careful habits, disasters still happen, and that's where recovery software becomes a photographer's lifeline. And I've had to use software to recover photos countless times at this point. So even if you put everything that you've learned in this video to practice, SD cards eventually will still fail. Or you might delete files by accident, you might pull a card out too quickly before the device has properly ejected it, or you might face a sudden error when you try and transfer files from one place to another. When this happens, it feels like everything might be lost, but it doesn't have to be. So don't bother with paid SD recovery tools. You can get the job done with a free tool called DMDE, or Disk Editor and Data Recovery. Let me show you how it works. So to fake a lost file, I'm going to open up my SD card and we're going to create a Word document called Help, I've been deleted. I'm then going to delete that file and use DMDE to recover it. So step 1 is to open the software and choose the device that you want to scan, and that's going to be your SD card. You're then going to select the volume, which is another way of describing your SD card, and you're going to click Open Volume. And here you can see that I didn't even need to scan the card. The deleted Word document is already there, ready to be recovered. To recover it, it's dead simple. Right click the file, click Recover, and then choose where you want the recovered file to end up, and then you are done. You've saved the file from the depths of SD card hell. Now, if the file that you'd like to recover isn't immediately available, then click Full Volume Scan, and that will find all of the files that you're after most of the time, in my experience. DMDE is free and it's that simple to use, so don't waste your money on any paid alternatives. And if you'd like to check out DMDE, then click the link in the video description, and don't wait until disaster strikes. Click the link in the description, download the software, and keep your photos and videos protected where they belong. And if you'd like to continue leveling up your photography, why not click the video that's on the screen right now.